Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Hello again, everyone, and thanks for joining us here at KAKM Studios for Saturday's edition of Alaska Weather. On the fire danger chart here, not too bad. Got some areas of high fire danger north of the Alaska Range on up into the southern upper Yukon area, and areas of high danger here from the Matanuska Valley across Anchorage and a little bit down to the south. That all kind of dissipating or becoming smaller with the rain moving in this afternoon, the showers developing up to the north, and then the more widespread area over the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta up into the Seward Peninsula, Kobuk Valley, and on up extending northwest across the Noatak Valley. And satellite imagery today shows a pretty good front, rather vivid here, pushing across the Aleutians, but beginning to stretch out and weaken, bringing some moisture in toward the central Aleutian, or the eastern Aleutians this afternoon, with a lot of clouds and a few showers back to the west, and then some moisture flowing southward here into across the Arctic coast and the North Slope areas. A few breaks over the central North Slope areas, and then a trough right through here with some clouds, another one back through here, mostly just mid and high level stuff there coming down into the Bering Strait, and then a lot of moisture flowing into the southeast interior today from the Gulf of Alaska yesterday, and kind of meeting up with some moisture over the southern interior. So we had some thunderstorm activity develop here over the Susitna Valley and scattered along the Alaska Range and on over the 40-mile country and the eastern Alaska Range. And then you can see more clouds gathering down here to the south, and that's associated with the next system that'll be eventually spreading some more rain up into the southeast coast. On the chart today, high pressure at the surface effectively shut the shower activity off down over the southern areas. Still some lingering stuff up here to the north, anywhere from 1 to 1/3 of an inch, or 1/10 to 3/10 of an inch of rain falling across the northern southeast coast. Heavier amounts here along the North Gulf Coast, up to a 1/2 inch falling today from Yakutat back in toward Prince William Sound over to Portage Glacier. And some of that coming through Turnagain Arm and moving into the Anchorage area with showers developing here, thunderstorms over the Susitna Valley, showers along the Alaska Range, Kenai Peninsula, down around Kodiak Island, and a more concentrated area of moisture here from the Kuskokwim Mountains up to the northeast, across the Tanana Valley. Just mostly showery conditions there. They had warmer temperatures up in the Fairbanks area today than what we were seeing yesterday, well into the 60s. And then a break here over the upper Yukon and a few scattered showers over the eastern North Slope. And with that moisture coming down from the Arctic, some snow and fog at Barrow. Wainwright had rain and a mixture of conditions also over at Atusuk. But nice conditions out here with a lot of VFR again from the interior down across the Yukon Delta, Nunivak Island, a few clouds here around St. Lawrence Island, and then a lot more widespread lower cloudiness here over the Pribilofs on down to the Alaska Peninsula and the eastern Aleutian areas. Well, for tonight, that front really doesn't move much, just kind of hangs in over the eastern Aleutians there, so cloudy, occasionally wet conditions, areas of fog in that area, but the wind's not all that strong at all, and that'll extend all the way out to Shimei and Attu. Otherwise, the Bering Sea fairly dry here, especially over the eastern and southeast areas. Areas of fog developing, and that same pattern right up to the Bering Strait there, with showers, thunderstorms this evening here over the interior along this trough into the Alaska Range area, and possibly over the Matanuska, Susitna Valley areas as well. And showers for the Kenai Peninsula, so tending to diminish here. The rainfall rates and intensity becoming more showery, less continuous along the entire North Gulf Coast and Prince William Sound. Scattered showers to the Copper River Basin. Trough coming down from the north, kind of on the western side of this 1,000 millibar low there over towards Dead Horse. Look for low clouds, fog, flurries there for the central, maybe the eastern Arctic coast, kind of a mixed precipitation in across the north slope areas to the Brooks Range. And then some drizzle, light rain, fog here on the west side. And again, that trough kind of remaining in place, and then the moisture streaming northward here brings a chance of rain with that warm front into Port Alexander to Sitka, maybe a little ways inland by late tonight, staying cloudy to the south. And then for tomorrow, that whole system almost tracks due north, so that'll bring rain mostly to the central southeast coast, just grazing Prince of Wales Island, northward up across or into the Yukon here. Yakutat definitely looking at rainfall with dry conditions, though, down over the southern panhandle areas. Tomorrow afternoon, showers, scattered thunderstorms again developing over the eastern interior from the northeast Copper River Basin right up into Eagle again, which picked up about 1/4 of an inch of rain this afternoon with shower activity there. More concentrated thunderstorms possible, and definitely more continuous, heavier precipitation with this trough back out to the west, trailing into the Kuskokwim Bay area. Scattered showers, mostly cloudy skies. Prince William Sound with minus the showers, but for Kodiak Island, Bristol Bay, and the peninsula, mostly cloudy with a few scattered showers. Low clouds and fog out over the Bering Sea. And looks like a little bit more wind for the eastern Arctic coast there with, again, low clouds, fog, and flurries throughout much of the day. Drier back to the west and closer to that high pressure area, and a very weak low here just northwest in the Nikolsky, and that front still stalled out over the eastern Aleutians. That'll keep it cloudy generally with occasional light rain, drizzle, maybe even some fog, but better conditions back out to the west. This portion of the front really falling apart there, and even this stretch right there not very significant at all. And then we'll see for Monday, stronger system just appears there off to the southwest. There may spread some rain up to the western Aleutians. Definitely an increase in the winds there a little bit from what they'll be tomorrow, but pretty light winds here all the way from Atka and Adak up to the Bristol Bay area. Looking at maybe 15 knots here across the Alaska Peninsula from the west or west-northwest. High pressure, light winds over much of the central and northern Bering Sea. So low clouds and fog will tend to be on the increase through this entire area, but should stay pretty nice here from Kotzebue Sound across the Seward Peninsula, getting in the fog, low clouds again over towards Tin City and Wales, but mostly sunny possible here across the southwest interior. Low pressure here near just north of Lake Iliamna, so rain will spread into across south central Alaska and the Kenai Peninsula, Cook Inlet tomorrow night, and probably will last or could possibly last the entire day on Monday. So it looks pretty wet in these areas. Drier up to the northeast there, but scattered thunderstorms and showers, especially along this trough, moving into the central interior and then eventually shifting eastward, inching its way towards the Fairbanks area during the afternoon. Showers along the North Gulf Coast, just scattered over the northern panhandle and partly to mostly sunny down to the south with some northwest breezes. Temperatures down that way today, 50s for the most part, although Ketchikan pushed up to 61, Sitka had 55, and Petersburg 59, Juneau had 58, 53, actually lower 50s there from Yakutat back to Cordova into Prince William Sound, Valdez 54, 58 at Homer, 52 degrees in Kodiak with 60s, 66 mid-afternoon at Big Lake. Otherwise, the valleys up there in the lower 60s, mid to upper 50s, Copper River Basin, and then that's Tok with 67 degrees, Fairbanks at 65, same thing at Tanana, and lower 60s all the way up across the Koyukuk Valley and the Fort Yukon area, lower 50s in the Brooks Range, and Umiat Airfield up to 58 today, and near 50 out along the eastern coastline there, but Kaktovik 39, Barrow 36, and upper 30s to upper 40s across the northwest, and mid 50s to lower 60s here across the Seward Peninsula. Caltag had 70 this afternoon, McGrath 63, St. Mary's at 66, and a 57 out at Amonic and Unalakleet, 37 Savunga, Lower to mid 40s across the Pribilofs. Otherwise, we've got low 50s here along the southwest coast. Upper 40s to mid 50s for the peninsula. Mid 40s, the rule across the Aleutians. And for lows tonight, 40s here, 40s to lower 50s across all of southern Alaska. A little chillier, 30s over the Bering Sea through the Strait, Seward Peninsula. 20s to mid 30s north of the Brooks Range. And for the highs tomorrow, into the 60s again here over the southwest interior. 50s for the most part, could be some lower 60s again, or into the 60s through the Susitna Valley areas, and 50s to lower 60s for the Tanana Valley eastward toward the border, where Eagle may peak out at 66, and 50s to mid 60s there across the southeast coast, where a little bit more sun will probably break out to the east of that front. It looks like it'll remain just offshore. Flying weather tomorrow morning, you've got marginal VFR, western Dixon entrance up along the coastline here, westward across Prince William Sound, and maybe here along the Alaska Range, IFR Kodiak Island, and also for the central western Arctic coast, pushing down across the western North Slope to the Brooks Range, and areas IFR out over the Bering Sea from the Pribilofs down to the Aleutians. Tomorrow afternoon definitely looks pretty IFR-ish here from the eastern Aleutians to about Atka. This area offshore, so marginal for the Pribilofs, some marginal VFR with the fog, low clouds there, north side of the St. Lawrence Island area. On up across just about the entire North Slope there looks to be marginal tomorrow afternoon into the eastern Brooks Range, and then right on down the central interior, eastern Alaska Range, all the way to Kodiak Island. IFR showing up now along the southeast coast, and a big area IFR for the eastern Arctic coast, and again, right down to the Brooks Range. So taking a look at passes for Anaktuvik, IFR in the northern approach, otherwise marginal, lowest conditions on the northern approach for Adigan as well. Lake Clark and Merrill, marginal VFR. Rainy, VFR becoming marginal. Windy, same pattern, becoming marginal VFR, and that same forecast good for Isabel and Mentasta, with Tanita looking pretty VFR for Tanita. Portage, IFR becoming marginal, and for Chilkoot and White, VFR becoming marginal. And for the freezing levels here, again, northerly flow out of the Arctic there, pushing 2,000 feet right down to the Brooks Range. Surface, though, holding back along the coast, 4,000 feet into the Koyukuk Valley, with warmer conditions, 8,000 to 6,000 feet through the southern interior, mostly around 6,000 here from the North Gulf Coast down to the Alaska Peninsula. And then warming up, again, that low center tracking northward. So some pretty warm air aloft in advance of that, pushing the highs tomorrow, or with 10,000 feet, kind of supporting those highs in the 60s over the southern panhandle. And for icing, could be some rime icing here above about 3,000 feet in the north, and probably more in the 4,000 to 5,000 foot range as it extends down to the south. Nothing out west over the western interior, nothing through this area. And then with that system coming northward, again, the bulk of the moisture streaming northward, so probably catching the northern panhandle with possible moderate rime icing. And for the winds aloft, here's that low center, 100-knot southerly jet right into the panhandle there. But again, south to north, so really not much of an eastward push to it. Sharp trough developing here over the north central interior areas. And then a broad trough out here over the southern Bering Sea and the Aleutians. For 9,000 feet, south-southeast 20 to 30 knots for the panhandle. Pretty good trough through here, but pretty light winds, 10 to 25 knots. Northerly out in the west, southeasterlies 20 knots across the northern Bering Sea, and lighter over the Aleutians. 3,000 foot winds, much the same. Turbulence, occasional light to isolated moderate through the northwest and off the panhandle. And after the break, I'll be back with the marine forecasts.
Welcome back to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider. As you well know, you can get forecast information for any day of the week. Today, tonight, tomorrow, out to 6 or 7 days. It includes the high and low temperature, the wind direction, the chance of rain or snow in your part of Alaska. But did you know that there is information available to forecast out to 2 weeks? So the question is, how would you use that information? And here to answer that question today and tell us a lot more about climate services from the U.S. National Weather Service Alaska region is Rick Toman. He's the program manager for the Climate Science and Services. And Rick, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Dave.
How would we use information that is out to 2 weeks instead of just the high and low and the chance of rain?
Well, Dave, as we move out in time, of course, forecasts become more uncertain. So as we move into that second week from now, we're not looking at specific highs or lows or precipitation amounts at any given place. What we can do with the state of the science at this point is get a handle on patterns. So we can say things like increased chances for stormy weather in the Bering Sea in 2 weeks, or we've been in a cold weather pattern, looks like 8 to 10 days from now, that pattern's going to change. Those are the kind of forecasts that we can currently make in that second week.
So you're increasing lead time for perhaps big or small weather events and telling us the likelihood of maybe more coastal storms or wind events in some areas?
Those are the kinds of things that that we hope to be able to let Alaskans know in the second week forecast. And if you have an activity or an event that you would find that kind of advance notice useful, whether it's moving stuff off of the beach, whether to go out hunting or to come back from camp, those kind of decisions, the week 2 provides the opportunity for you to get a handle on that kind of information.
Okay. What other type of weather impacts that we're familiar with might Alaskans use climate services for?
Well, in the forecast realm, we can go provide some information from this week 2, say the 8 to 14 day period, on out to the monthly and even seasonal time scale. Now, those monthly seasonal forecasts are still kind of just really very much pattern dependent, and the amount of detail that we can provide at this point is still pretty limited. Generally, indications of how temperature and precipitation will fall in maybe above normal, below normal kind of range. But in the week 2 period, we can be considerably more specific than that as far as the general patterns and really the impacts on Alaskans.
Okay, so we would be talking about generalizations there that would tell us that the period might be more stormy, might be more hot, more dry, more cold, and situations like that.
That's correct. So we're not going to be able to say in which community, for instance, there's the threat of coastal flooding, but we can often be able to tell we're moving into a pattern that would be conducive to big Bering Sea storms. So if you're in an area that could potentially impact you, you'll want to pay attention to the weather forecast.
Okay. Now, every day and every hour of the day, the National Weather Service is working on a forecast for the next day. But how do you start your forecast process for that extended period that goes out beyond 7 days?
Well, the way things work right now, we start off with the expected general flow pattern for Alaska and the whole world, really, and then we narrow that down to Alaska. So we start off with the basic computer model forecast. There's quite a few different computer models that we look at, bring those together. And then another important part of that is we attempt to assess the confidence. The reality is often 2 weeks away, the computer models are very divergent. They have lots of different solutions, and that's an indication that we don't have much confidence. But when we see more agreement in that time frame, and when that agreement is a pattern that will be potentially very impactful for Alaska or is a big change from what we've been in, that's when we can then take that expected pattern. We have computer models forecasting it. We've assessed the confidence. Now we can move that forward. How, using our experience as Alaskan weather forecasters, how does that typically play out for Alaska? So is this a stormy pattern for the Bering Sea? Is this an extra rainy period for Southeast? Is this the kind of pattern that generates strong winds potentially in the Anchorage Bowl? Is this a deep cold pattern for the interior? All of those are the kind of things that we're looking at in these large-scale patterns. That's very different than telling you that the winds on 10 days from now are going to be gusting to 120 on the hillside. We're looking for patterns, not the very specific information that the Weather Service will then hone in on as the event gets closer.
So the idea is to keep the 5, 6, 7 day forecast the same, where you are getting the standard high and low temperature and the chance of wind or rain, but further out you get a broad general forecast, but as the time gets closer to that event, we'll get a lot more specific.
That's correct.
Okay, very good. So how can people use this information if I am out in the bush and I want to see, is a coastal storm expected in my region, or is a chance for that improving over the next 2 to 3 weeks? Where could I go to get information like that?
When we see that potentially impactful or a big change in the weather is coming 8 to 14 days out, typically we will start to highlight that on the Weather Service Facebook site. We might produce a YouTube video highlighting that, linking that on our Facebook site. So often we don't, at this point, we don't have much to say in that because we're really looking for those forecasts of opportunities. But one thing we can say very likely as we go through the next 2 or 3 years, there'll be more and more of this kind of forecast information available in that week 2 time frame.
Okay, and something that emergency managers and city planners and folks in villages might be interested in keeping an eye out for, looking for that information to be headlined, whether that's on social media or perhaps through the National Weather Service channels there to get information from you to make better plans a little bit longer term and make better preparations in the event that things become a little bit more unsettled.
Absolutely. Climate Services with the National Weather Service Alaska region is talking to the state of Alaska every week, apprising them of that 2-week outlook. And on the social media side, we are working to keep Alaskans informed so that when we think we have some confidence in a high impact or a big change, that's the best way right now for folks to find out about that. Twitter, Facebook, so stay tuned to your National Weather Service.
Very good, a developing program. Rick Thoman with the National Weather Service Alaska region. He's a Climate Science and Services Program Manager. Thanks so much for joining us again, Rick, and I hope to have you back again soon.
Great, thanks Dave.
For another edition of Alaska Weather Facts, I'm meteorologist Dave Snider. We'll see you next time.
Welcome back. Well, that next system will be rolling northward off the coast. Not all that strong, but strong enough for small craft advisories here. Out of the south and the south coast to southeast, lighter northeasterlies up north. South winds 15 for northern Lynn Canal and south to southeast, 10 to 15 for the remainder of the inside waters. And for Monday, we've got westerlies at about 15 along the coast, taking a turn to the northwest here on the south coast, southwest up north. Winds 30 knots for Lynn Canal with seas up to 6 feet, southwest 20 with 4-foot seas for Stevens Passage, and Clarence Strait northwest 20 with 4-foot seas. Cook Inlet tomorrow, southwest 15 to 20 knots. That same pattern extends right down to Chillicothe Strait. South to southwest here 15 knots from Kodiak Island, turning westerly along the North Gulf Coast. And then for Monday, Prince William Sound, southerly winds at 15, and that'll extend across the entire North Gulf Coast. Pick it up to 20 knots for the Barren Islands into Kamishak Bay out of the south. Southwest 20 there for Kodiak Island. And a small craft advisories here south of the Forelands there for the southern inlet for southerlies at 20 knots. For Bristol Bay, southeast 10 knots. Southeast 10 also for the Alaska Peninsula. Seas running from 1 to 4 feet, so pretty light wind day tomorrow coming up for that area. And then westerlies here on the Bering Sea side, 20 knots right up into Bristol Bay. Lighter west-northwest breezes 10 to 15 from Sitkinak to Cape Sarachev. Excuse me. And for the eastern Aleutians, southeasterlies 15 knots tomorrow, getting a little more squirrely, but 20 knots to southwest 20 knots, or southwest 15 to 20, central areas turning southerly and lighter winds back to the west. Then small craft advisories make an appearance here for the western Aleutians throughout the day Monday with the next frontal system, southeast 15 to 20, and then light west-northwesterlies for the Fox Islands. And for the southwest coast, east and northeast at about 10, pretty light there. Still looking at some small craft advisory winds there for St. Lawrence Island right out of the north. And then for Monday, we've got northwest winds here. St. Lawrence Island, right down across the entire southwest coast with 4-foot seas. Pretty light breezes out of the northwest there for the Pribilofs at 10 knots. And also back up across the northern Bering Sea around St. Matthew Island. Higher pressure out here to the west, just kind of giving you a light northwesterly breeze across the eastern Bering Sea. And for the Arctic coast, northwest 15 on the east side, seas 2 to 3 feet, 15 out of the north for the central coast. Then 20 knots here all the way down to Cape Thompson. And south of there, north 25 knots from Cape Thompson down to the Bering Strait, and actually St. Lawrence Island. And for Monday, southwest here 15, turn southerly there west of Point Hope and Cape Lisburne, extend along the western coast, southwest for the central coast, and northwest 15 on the east side. Again, seas pretty slight, just 2 feet over there. And for tonight, more moisture starts streaming northward here along this warm front there from the main low center hanging back to the southwest. So a chance of rain after midnight or more on toward morning there for the central panhandle and maybe up to the North Gulf Coast. Otherwise, diminishing rainfall rates and amounts here for the North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound tonight, but showers lingering, isolated thunderstorms in the interior here. Again, from the Matanuska-Susitna Valley, western Alaska Range, on up to the east, but nothing all that widespread. And then moisture there with that low on the eastern Arctic coast, flowing mixture of precipitation southward to the Brooks Range. Fair here in the west, weak front, keeping it kind of damp and cloudy over the eastern Aleutians, but not much in the way of wind all the way out west. And then for Sunday, same pattern, clouds occasionally damp there for the eastern Aleutians, scattered showers, Bristol Bay and Kodiak Island. A more numerous shower and thunderstorm area there with some heavier precipitation gradually slipping eastward in across Fairbanks tomorrow afternoon. Thunderstorms to the east. Rain with this system, mostly from Port Alexander northward into the Juneau area, back west to maybe Cape Yakataga. Let's look at the weather. Have a great evening.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.